Joseph Chen. Michael Fawcett. Kathleen Goforth. Here. Melee Himuli.
Here.
Aurelio Huizar.
He is here, but he's not here present.
Yeah. Ron McKenna.
Here.
Jason Mendelson.
Present.
Damanpreet Sarai. Cheryl Schaff.
Here.
Remy Tan.
Here.
Desiree Thayer.
Here.
Robert Whitehair.
Here.
Thank you. We have a forum.
Excellent. Thanks, Joanne.
Diane texted that she's on her way.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Before we begin, we're gonna move after the minutes. I know you're all excited to hear that, but I want to change that up here. For any members of the public who are here, be aware of that change. Okay, so the first thing on our agenda is the approval of the minutes for the October 10th, 2024 regular meeting and approval of the consent agenda. So I hope everyone's had a chance to look at the minutes from last month. Are there any comments on the minutes? Public comments on the minutes. All right, can I get a motion to approve the minutes and to set the agenda? The board,
I'll move to approve the.
wait, hold on a second.
I second you.
The one. Okay. Steven, you can look at mine. Or we can couple up there.
One print it out, one print it out.
Can we delay?
Print this out.
This until everyone's gonna look at it? Yeah. Okay, and I'm gonna move, we had no public comment, we'll revisit that. I'm gonna move on to item number 2 and then come back to number 1. Okay, I will I won't stall too much here, but my report will be brief. The board had their retreat, which I think was very successful for them. Several of us were there in person. I appreciate everyone who came and those who were online listening. They did the opening big picture was the strategic plan that we had presented to us last time. It was presented to them with similar discussion. And again, that is not a finalized item. It's just the starting point that'll come back before us in the future. I'll save some comments for the end about some other things we're going to do differently that's evolving right now. But I just wanted to say, I want to thank you all for being here. I want everybody here to feel heard and seen and appreciated as we go forward. I often talk too much and I'm going to stop doing that. And I want everybody to think about speaking on every issue. And if you have a question, some of us have been doing this for a very long time. And we know the acronyms and we have our own agendas and things. If anything doesn't make sense, please stop and ask that question, because the key is we have to be able to communicate with the public and understand where things are confusing. And a lot of this is very confusing. And we're going to be going into some very confusing times in the near future here. And I think it's important that we all speak, if we can, on every issue that comes before us. And that we not only do that with our own purpose of getting our points across, but also asking questions and hearing from everybody else. And so I'm going to try, and I'm not good at this, but I'm going to try and make sure that everybody gets heard and gets listened to on each topic, no matter how big or small. And I think that's incredibly important. So we all feel like we're participating in this fully. And those of us that are introverted, you can do it maybe with hand signals or some other way, but I will please.
Yourself?
No,
Okay.
but I'm just saying we should do that. And also, I think one of the things I'm going to try and do is, if you're used to talking a lot, maybe pull back and encourage others to go first, so we don't take away or intimidate people as we do that. So I just want to say that up.
Could you give us an example?
No, but you can. What do you give me some ideas right now, Stephen? What do you think?
You know I love you.
And I do want to say I have one bright spot that I just overheard here, which is that I think that one of our members may have been or about to be on our Slow County. Serving will make it big public servant for my business town of Burlingame. So thank you very much.
Nice.
Now I know where to go with all my problems. So thank you for all of that. So everybody give her a hand, please. Is there any public comment on what I just said, or any not public comment? Any group comment? Okay, great, thank you. I'm going to, did you get the, you got them out? I didn't see. So, did everybody have a chance to get the agendas? Yes. Okay, does anyone need any time to look at them? Any further time?
Didn't find the agenda that was posted.
Oh, would you like me to print it out for you?
Yeah, that would be.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna keep stalling. Please print a couple more out. So again, we'll skip member introductions this month. So we have some more happy things to think of. I wasn't able to come up with fun things like Cheryl did, so I apologize. But I don't want to
Thank you.
lose that. We'll pick that up at the time.
I'm sorry, that's it out loud.
Hold on.
Jason, did you say we're putting the Brown Act?
Yeah, we'll do that right now. As soon as we do the consent agenda. Yeah, okay. We've skipped it twice. We can't put it off anymore. So we're gonna do that as soon as we do this. Maybe. We kind of need to do the agenda before we do the meeting, though, so I want to get.
I'm sorry to keep reading.
Oh, you're right.
Second. Remy, Cheryl, Boo.
I originally moved in, actually, Melee, seconded. Seconded.
Okay. We have a roll call on that. And Joseph, you got everybody who's here? Okay, cool.
Thank you. Diane Bailey,
Aye.
Michael Clausen,
Aye.
Melee Himuli, Aurelio Cesar, Gail Lee, Donna Senna, Jason Mendelson,
Aye.
Dharmeet Sarai, Cheryl Shah,
Aye.
Remy Tan. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Much. We're now going to go to our hotly anticipated 3-month in waiting Brown Act training from our wonderful council. Jennifer Salter from the interwebs, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for moving me to the top of the agenda, Jason. I appreciate it greatly. We're just going to go ahead and jump in with our Brown Act training. I will take questions at the end, so feel free to jot those down. And to the extent that there's questions in the chat, perhaps Vanessa or folks on the ground can help me facilitate that because I can't necessarily see that. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jennifer Stalzer. I'm Associate General Counsel for PCE. I've been with the organization since 2018, truly my favorite client, and I'm really happy that you're all here tonight. So thank you. Thank you for being here. We're going to start, go ahead and move to the next slide. The first sort of tenet of the Brown Act and understanding the Brown Act in context, which is really what governs our public meetings and how we post and how we communicate about what is the public's business and the eyes of the state of California. The first sort of tenet of that to provide context is the duties of membership. So the first kind of green arrow there, as you can see, is learning the function of your committee or commission, and also preparing for and attending meetings regularly. I know that you all do that so beautifully, and that part of that is the amazing work of the PCE staff in getting the agenda and agenda packet out to you early. The part that I'm going to talk about is that third bullet point there, the light blue, complying with applicable laws. So we'll talk more about what the Brown Act is, what it means in terms of our responsibilities for holding public meetings, posting about public meetings, and what that means in terms of communicating with our fellow committee and commission members. The fourth bullet point is respecting fellow commission and committee members and the public. And I will talk a bit about how that works and how we integrate that kind of respect in our communications with the public and in our meetings. And the last point there is about engaging our functions here as the CAC to improve the community and to improve the organization. One part of this before we move on is sort of understanding where the CAC sits in terms of PCE staff and the board and PCE generally. So PCE's board sits in charge of PCE and the CAC advises the board and staff implements decisions from the board. So I know that sometimes that can be a little bit confusing to or difficult to grasp, but that's sort of the flow, the anticipated flow of the relationship between the board, CAC, and staff. And we'll go into that a little bit more as we move on in the presentation. Next slide, please. We'll talk briefly, in addition to the Brown Act, about Public Records Act requests, ethical considerations, and also Form 700. Next slide. At the root of the Brown Act and political reform acts generally are the notion that there's an ethical value in government transparency. Essentially, we want a process that the public can observe, and we want to integrate the public into our meetings in a way that they have a noticed right to be heard. And the point of that is considering that public input in the decision-making process itself. And the root of the next few slides that you'll be seeing is really that the conduct of the public's business is the public's business. And that may seem kind of like a silly bullet point, but we're really these laws originated in kind of the smoke-filled room, closed off sort of trope of government, and they've worked to really illuminate governmental process and provide order and regularity to how the public business is conducted. Next slide. So this is Mr. Brown himself, and as you can tell from the age of this photo, we've been at the Brown Act for a long time. It was adopted in 1953. It was actually made part of the California Constitution in 2000. And next slide. What we're talking about with the Brown Act is any kind of governance over public meetings. So again, the purpose is that the public business is done in public meetings, not in private. All meetings of the legislative body of a local agency shall be open and public, and all persons shall be permitted to attend any meeting of the legislative body. So that's why we, are posting our agendas. We're welcoming the public to come either remotely or also in person to sit with you all. Next slide. In terms of the Brown Act, we're going to talk about to whom it applies, what is a meeting, what constitutes a meeting, because it's a little bit broader than you might think. Agenda requirements, the public's right, what are closed sessions, which I do want to inform you a little bit about, don't apply as much to the Community Advisory Committee, but do apply to the board, and the consequences for violations. Next slide, please. The Brown Act in the state of California applies to legislative bodies. The legislative body includes the Community Advisory Committee, which we are in a session currently, of course. It also includes the board. and the board subcommittees, including the executive committee and the audit and finance committee. Next slide. So there are committees that are not subject to the Brown Act, and we have a few of those that derive out of the Community Advisory Committee, which include ad hoc advisory committees that are made up of the legislative body members and constitute less than a quorum. And you may hear me chiming in from time to time about how these committees can be created and what their requirements need to be in order to actually be ad hoc advisory committees versus Brown Act body committees. And the requirements are the following in those open bullet points that you see. There can be no continuing subject matter jurisdiction, and there needs to be a limited term for those ad hoc advisory committees. So essentially, they're anticipated as solving a particular problem or issue, researching a particular issue or question that's before the larger legislative body. And then we also need to have an end date so that they're not ongoing. If we don't meet those requirements, they continue to look more like Brown Act subject bodies. And we'll talk about what the special requirements for those are. Next slide. In terms of a meeting, we're talking about any congregation of a majority of the members of the legislative body at the same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate on any matters within the commission or committee's jurisdiction. And what this means for you and for members of this committee is that really a majority may not consult outside an agency convened meeting, a noticed meeting. And we have special laws and regulations for virtual meetings that allow participation for a very limited set of circumstances, including medical emergencies and a couple of other possibilities in terms of participating remotely. This is an evolving area. And so if you have questions about that, I would really appreciate that as much as a heads up that you can give to Kirsten and Vanessa and me so that we can assist you. If you have a situation where you need to participate remotely, we can discuss if that's a possibility. And just a word to the wise, the kind of exceptions to participate remotely in a committee meeting, a noticed meeting, are usually limited to 2 in a year. So this is not something that can be repeated with frequency. Next slide. Within the Brown Act and case law around the Brown Act, there's this notion of a illegal meeting. And an illegal meeting is essentially when a majority of members come together and discuss committee or commission business. And there's a number of this, and we'll go over those in detail. The ones listed here are serial meetings, communicating with one another through intermediaries. And there's other means of subterfuge is a very kind of dark and loaded clause there, but we'll see kind of some examples of how communication can occur and a meeting can occur that might not seem obvious. And one of those is in the second bullet point. In terms of social media, interaction with other members of the committee or commission via social media may constitute an illegal meeting. And we'll go over that in a little more detail in future slides. Next slide. This is an example of a serial meeting, and sort of telephone type example of how information that is subject to the Brown Act, or communications that are subject to the Brown Act, which would be any information or business of this committee, could be communicated to individual members, starting with A, to B, to C, to D, to E, even though those members may not be in the same place or on the same telephone call. This can happen, through telephone communication. This can happen through social media, as I just mentioned, through text communication or email communication. And this would constitute a serial meeting in this way, would constitute a violation of the Brown Act. Of course, if those arrows represent the communication of information that is governed by this committee. Next slide. Another kind of way that this happens in the traditional sense is that one person, here A, acts as a hub of information for communications from various other members of the committee, in this case constituting a quorum. So B, C, and D, and E in this instance would be communicating information to A, constituting 5 members of the committee discussing information, if you will, through their communications with A. Next slide. What is not a meeting, or what a meeting is not? Individual contacts between commission members and another person. So the prior 2 slides that we just saw, we were treating the number 5 as a quorum. So that communication is a tipping point when folks are discussing information outside of the context of a noticed meeting like we're having tonight. Individual contacts, so one-to-one contacts, would not constitute a quorum, of course, of the CAC or the board or most committees and commissions. So that would not be a violation of the Brown Act. We'll talk a little bit more about why that wouldn't be recommended at anyway, but it wouldn't be a technical violation of the Brown Act because we wouldn't have the quorum being met in that instance. Other examples that may impact your lives out there participating in other public meetings or conferences, even if you are a majority or a quorum, at a conference that is open to the public does not constitute a meeting. Social or ceremonial occasions do not constitute a meeting either, or an open and noticed meeting of another body of the local agency. For example, a board meeting, or a legislative body of another local agency. For example, if a quorum of the Community Advisory Committee attended a San Mateo County Board of Supervisors meeting. And lastly, the public meeting on a topic of local community concern would also not constitute a meeting. There are a lot of exceptions and a lot of them are nuanced. So again, I encourage you to reach out if you have any questions in advance of attending a meeting or another event. Again, the big takeaway from this slide is really to remember that as long as there's as long as the majority does not discuss commission business, then these examples do not constitute a meeting for purposes of the Brown Act. Next slide. So we have now the agenda and notice requirements, which is something that PCE staff really handles amazingly well and is very cognizant of. Our requirements for posting agendas are 72 hours prior to the meeting. For special meetings, that there's a 24-hour deadline. Each agenda item must be briefly described so that a general member of the public could understand it. Closed session items, again, this doesn't necessarily apply to the Community Advisory Committee, but you may see that on a board agenda, must also be listed. And we also must include time for public comment after each and every one of our agenda items. And also a preliminary time for public comment at the beginning of the meeting to ensure that no one from the public has any comments about an item that is related to our business, but just not on our agenda. So you may hear me chime in with, although folks are incredibly good at it, just reminding everyone to welcome public comment after each agenda item. Next slide. There is a limited set of circumstances where the commission or committee may speak to items that are not listed on the public agenda that's published. And those are helpful to go over because it may impact us in terms of how we respond to public comment. So we may give a brief response to statements or questions that are not on the agenda, and that often comes by way of public comment. We also may have a brief announcement or report on our own activities, and you'll often see that agendized for our meeting, the CAC. Also, of course, can ask questions for clarification, referrals to staff for information or feedback. And you may hear me or staff ask for a more extended conversation to stop and be placed on an agenda for future discussion so that we're kind of safe in terms of the Brown Act's requirements that, you know, if we're going to have a very extended conversation on a particular subject matter, that is agendized and clearly stated to the public. Next slide, please. In that vein, here are the rights of the public. Touched on these a little bit. The right to be notified of items on the agenda, the right to attend and speak without identifying oneself. So we can't compel someone to give their specific name, although folks, you know, sometimes want to do that and they're welcome to do it. It can't be compelled. We also, the public has the right to record the meeting, although now we do that pretty much without exception, and that's how our minutes are created. Again, I said this before, but there is a right to speak before or during consideration of an item, and that's up to the chair's discretion on how to facilitate that. We are allowed to limit public comment in terms of length. And so you might see our timer go up of the 2 minutes. The chair has discretion to extend that. Generally that runs very smoothly in our meetings. There's a right to see the commission and materials, so the agenda and all supplementary materials that are provided to committee members are also available to the public. Next slide. This is just a brief touch on what closed session is. So as you can imagine, there are some very limited subject matter content that is allowed to be discussed in private, away from the public meeting. That does not come into play with the subject matter of this committee, but to give you kind of an overall view of what you might see in terms of the board's agenda, we will be talking about, confidential inquiries, and, things like that, HR, issues that are very, specific, and pending litigation. What we do when there is a closed session is a report out, after the closed session occurs. And there's, a whole, subset here of, information that can be disclosed, after a closed session has concluded. Next slide, please. The consequences as written into the Brown Act are, actually very harsh. Although, throughout my career, I have not seen, these be enacted upon anyone. But technically in the black letter of the law, as we say, a lawsuit could be brought by the DA or any other interested person. And violations, may be stopped by a civil lawsuit. This is a really important one here. So the third bullet point, some actions of the committee, if not cured, may be declared void. So you can imagine if you have a public meeting and you spend 4 or 5 hours going through committee business, voting on things, and that meeting is declared void, you would have to do everything over again in a publicly noticed meeting. That's why our agenda requirements, etc., are so important. There is a subset in the law for sanctions and jail time. Again, I have not seen this. And attorney's fees can be awarded for somebody who is bringing a Brown Act suit. So that is the extent of the slides I have for today. I know that I promised a little bit more, but if we need to come back to talk about ethics or have another presentation in terms of other requirements that are sort of around the Brown Act and the Public Records Act, I'll do that. But we're gonna stop there for tonight, just in the interest of time, and I'm more than happy to entertain any questions that you have about the Brown Act.
I'll ask a question.
If a majority of the commission goes out to dinner together but doesn't talk about commission business, is that okay?
Yeah, technically that is okay under the eyes of the law. That's the social exception that you saw at an earlier slide. I will sort of caution not against having dinner out, which I love. I will caution against, the kind of optics of how something may look to a member of the public, or I think that this applies a lot more in terms of the board, but we want to be very cognizant that sometimes it's not actually what is happening in the conversation, but what it appears to a member of the public to be. Again, I wouldn't let that stop a dinner where members are not discussing the information that the committee is authorized to deal with. But I certainly have dealt with situations like that in my career where the witness of a dinner like that or a meeting like that would fill in the blanks of what was being discussed, even if it was completely innocent. I do think that, given our position, I think that the stakes are lower in that sense. So it's a much lower risk proposition.
So yes, you could take us out to dinner for the holidays.
Thank you, John, for the
You got me, you got me.
I can hardly wait.
Could I bring up, in my experience, the 3 most perilous things that have happened in this space, which aren't that perilous? And Jen, please correct any of this. The first is emailing the group. Do not email the group. Do not email more than 3 or 4 people in the group about anything. When you want to communicate, send it to Vanessa or Kirsten, and then they can communicate out. So do announce, I have this thing going on. I want you to know about it. There's an emergency. I want us to talk about it. Send that into staff and then they can deal with it, but don't direct message the rest of us. The second place where that it becomes temptation, at least for me, has been in the working groups. I'm in working group 1 working on something, and then 5 minutes later we have working group 2, and I want to tell everybody we just did working group 1. Don't do that. Segregate and compartmentalize your working groups and don't cross the streams in emails or in conversations in those settings. And the third place, and this is where I do want an opinion, since I've been on this committee, I don't respond to any of the listservs I'm on because I don't know who's on them. So when there's a mass email to your group where you're like in some group you participate in, I don't know if all of you are on that same one, so I try not to send something out, because if the rest of you send something out, it becomes a serial meeting that might be a topic of interest. I assume that's still the conventional wisdom, Jen, or is it more liberal now in those lists?
No, I think that you're right on all of those points. It would have to, for it to be a violation, the last example, for it to be a violation of the Brown Act, it would have to be directly related to the CAC's, scope, an issue before the committee. So it wouldn't necessarily be a violation, but if it's in the clean energy space, then it certainly could brush up against that. I would add to that list, and I sort of alluded to this earlier, is social media. Social media comments on posts. If you get 4 or 5, my example of a quorum of 5, you get 5 or 4 comments on a post related to our scope of work for this committee, that could very, very much create a public record of communication that looks a lot like that hub example, a modern day hub example. It's not over the telephone, but it's on Facebook or Instagram or X or whatever communication that's issued, even if it's not a post that originated with any of you. So I would be very mindful of that. Of course, this is balanced with the First Amendment right and our freedom of speech, but we have to be cognizant of the subject matter that we're commenting on, and how the interaction may be a communication between us and other members of the committee.
And again, this is not to the rest of the world. So talking to your family or friends or neighbors is not prohibited about any of this. It's just this group talking to each other. But don't quiet down because of this. Just don't talk to us.
Also on social media, my understanding, Jen, is it's fine to share our social media posts. Please share our social media posts.
Absolutely.
We just don't comment.
Don't comment.
Share them.
Not commenting might be a good salve for the world in general, so that might be a good thing.
And an easy way to do that is to repost and turn comments off. That's something that I've seen done very beautifully. And in this climate, maybe that's something we want to do, to Jason's point.
Yeah, Jennifer, I just wondered, you used the example of 5 people, but our quorum on this committee would be 8. So what number should we keep in our mind?
Yeah, we should keep 8 in our mind. That's a really good point. We used 5 in our examples just because 8 can get a little bit unwieldy in terms of examples, but you're absolutely right. Again, that's the black letter of the law. I would prefer as counsel that we not ever be having conversations outside of a noticed meeting with multiple people of the committee on committee related content. So that's a kind of a more conservative take on the rule of 8 in this sense, but What we're really trying to preserve here is that the discussions happen in an open notice meeting. Not that the discussions don't happen. We certainly want those to happen. But we want them to occur in an open noticed meeting. But in terms of a violation of the Brown Act, you're absolutely right. That the quorum would be 8.
Okay, thank you.
Robert?
You said that the public has a right to see commission materials. When do they have the right to do it? After the decisions are made, a day before, 2 days before, 3 days before? Is there a rule of thumb? Is there a law on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So you've kind of asked a question that's the intersection of the Brown Act, which requires that we have the agenda up 72 hours. So that's not supplementary materials. And the kind of California Public Records Act, which indicates that an individual can request any public document kind of whenever they want, and we have 10 days to respond to that. As a matter of course, not necessarily dictated by the law, we tend to post our agenda packet relatively simultaneously to when it is distributed. And Vanessa, please correct me if I'm wrong on that. If we have updates, we'll go ahead and post that to the PCE website and update any corrections, you know, if we replace materials, et cetera, supplement materials, et cetera. So the public right under the Brown Act is really associated with the agenda itself. And there isn't the same time constraint in terms of the supplementary materials that you receive in your packet. But we do tend to post those relatively simultaneously, or at least on the day of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Right? No? Questions? Are there any members of the public here or online that want to say anything? Or ask any questions?
I'm not seeing anyone on Zoom.
Thank you. I would like to request, Kirsten, that we, if Vanessa, if it's possible, to specifically send out Jen's presentation to those who weren't here so they can get caught up, and then encourage them to ask Jen any questions they may have after that too, okay?
Yeah, I want to add to the really good point you made about the working groups, Jason. So yeah, if you're in one working group and then immediately, and then you're in another working group, yeah, please don't share what happened in the other working group, even though it seems counterintuitive and like you really want to do it. But the place to share out is in these meetings. So that's when we have the working group report. So that's when you share out all the cool things that happen in your working group, so the other working groups can hear it and it can inform their work. So share it. The point of the Brown Act isn't to not have you communicate, is to have you communicate here. So this is where you share it about the Brown Act. I mean, your working groups, and making sure that the other working groups can benefit from what you learn.
And just to footnote that as well, if you have any concerns, you know, about a communication, or you accidentally reply all or something like that, you know, I want you to feel free to tell staff about it, and we can work to remedy it. There really hasn't been a Brown Act problem that I couldn't solve, and I encourage us to be transparent about that.
Great. Cool. All right. Oh, Remy.
I know that some cities will have like city council at each town, CA, that the public can, you know, send something to a public body. So do we have something like that? And when that comment comes in, does that go directly to staff or back disseminate to this committee?
I didn't hear every word. Was that a question about emailed public comment?
Yes. When the general, the public says, oh, you know, CAC should look at, you know, EV charging and so town or so whatever. Right? He said
Yeah.
comment, and so how is that comment handled and dispersed to us so it doesn't violate
Yeah, that's a very good question because that's obviously, people tend to communicate through email. We have a process where if the communication is received timely before the meeting, and is brief enough, we can read it into the record from the email when the agenda item comes up. So that's kind of one process. The second may be distributing it to all CAC members as it comes in. Or I should say, if it's a very lengthy comment, we will distribute it. We won't read it in full into the record, but we can post it. And that's sort of the process that we follow here for both the board and the CAC.
And then I guess our protocol is we can't communicate outside of this meeting of that. Any response to that, right?
So there wouldn't be, I would not recommend responding privately to something that was situated as a public comment. Although I can see a situation, perhaps if it dealt with a specific jurisdiction or there was other follow-up to be done by a certain city or town where that advice may change. Generally, we would want to deal with that public comment within the context of the public meeting. And if we need to change that approach because of a specific request, then you'll hear from me on it. And we don't want to kind of be taking matters into our own hands outside the context of the public meeting.
Thanks very much, Jen. We appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you so much.
In honor of the Brown Act and with deep apologies, are there any topics not on the agenda that any members of the committee or the public would like to discuss or bring up? I forgot to do it at the beginning. No, I don't see one online either.
No.
Okay, thank you. All right. Now, Philip, sorry for the delay, but I will turn it over to you. And everybody should have had access to the slides from Philip for the energy programs overview, which will be the bulk of our meeting. Please take it away. Thank you for allowing us to move things around.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, CAC. For folks I met, good to see you, or folks I know, good to see you. And for new folks, nice to meet you. My name is Philip Kobernick. I'm the Associate Director of Energy Programs here at PCE. And I have lots of fun slides to get into, but essentially I'm going to give you a bit of a deep dive on what we are looking to do within the programs team, how we're looking to affect change within the community and move to decarbonization and transportation of buildings. And then, well, yeah, let's just dive in. Let's do this. Okay, so a few things to get into. I'm going to talk about our strategic approach, how we impact change. We do it through a number of ways, not just giving people money for doing things. We have lots of different approaches. Our org chart, our team has grown. I'll be getting to that. The specifics on our portfolio, some of our highlights, and then key metrics for folks who like budgets. We'll talk about that too. Some of the challenges that we see for this upcoming calendar year. These slides are very out of date, even though I only did them a couple days ago, but we can touch on that. And then the main area of innovation where we're focusing on, which is right sizing, I'll get to that. Essentially, how can we do this with the grid that we got, not the grid that we want to? And so we'll be talking, I'll talk a lot about that, and then what's upcoming next. Okay, so our theory on how we impact change in the programs teams in a number of different methodologies. So the first is influencing individual decisions. So, oops, too fast. So we do this through incentives. We give rebates for folks to afford use EVs, to put in even water heaters, all these stuff. That's probably the most obvious thing that the program does for a lot of folks. But we also provide technical assistance through a number of different channels, through property managers for apartment buildings, for example, to non-residential facilities through our consultants. We provide technical assistance to fleet managers, a lot of different ways. And then persuasion. So we have a wonderful marketing team that we partner with. We have orgs that we work with, like Grid Alternatives, that show up at community events and help the community identify what rebates that they can use for their personal situation. The next way we affect change is through innovation. So we like to do fun new things in the programs team. So a lot of this is testing new technology, looking at new methodologies for doing things, looking at new ways to use data. Like we synced DMV data with home energy data in an interesting way about a year ago. So we could see what households with EVs are doing in terms of their energy usage. And then we shape policy. So one of the most, actually, I could say not one of the most, the most impactful thing we've ever done in the programs team is to work with our local cities to adopt building codes that call for decarbonization. So adding EV chargers at new builds for apartments, or getting single family homes to be all electric at the time of new construction, and the multifamily homes to be all electric at the time of new construction. And now for a lot of these some of them are harder than others in terms of the legal landscape, but for EV charging, the state as a whole has caught up to what our local cities have been doing now for 5 years. And so what we did here impacted the entire state, because now the state building codes look a lot like, again, what Menlo Park was doing 4 or 5 years ago, what others were doing too. Okay, so really we're demonstrating at a local level what we can do to impact the state, which has happened in a number of different areas. Mobilizing market forces again, so we need to build momentum for building electrification. That is the newest kind of, what EVs were 10 years ago. So we need to get contractors familiar with putting in heat pump systems, build confidence, build consumer confidence. All that stuff is like building some snowball momentum. Okay, this is a lot, but I'll just say at a high level, our strategic goals are to help PCE be 100% greenhouse gas free by 2035. That includes, there's of course our power resources goals, but then in our programs goals, it's to help the community be greenhouse gas free. So we mostly focus on building electrification and transportation electrification as the 2 main areas of our focus. And then the second strategic goal here is that we want people to use energy when they have all electric things in a way that coincides with our renewable energy targets, providing renewable energy every hour of the day. Yeah.
By member jurisdictions reaching a goal to be 100% greenhouse, are you talking to the municipal operations, or are you talking about every business, every resident? Okay,
The community.
I like that goal better.
Yeah. Yeah, not just 1 or 2 little off. No, we mean the community.
You mean every building in the city, every city?
And then transportation as well.
And
Yeah, and then,
okay.
yeah, so those are the 2 areas that we're focusing. There's some nuance there, so we're not focusing so much on like heavy duty private vehicles. We do some heavy duty in the government fleet sector. And then for buildings, things like that, we're not doing things like major refineries or things like that. We're focusing on so far on residential, single family residential, and then aspire to grow over time. But that's the main area of focus right now. Okay, so we do this through, again, our big signature programs that spread. There's some that are really big and some that are smaller, tackling more kind of concrete elements. I'll get into that. Distributed energy resources, so things like solar storage to help local homes and non-residential facilities use renewable energy to reduce cost savings, to bring cost savings or reduce costs. The community benefits, of course, and then especially helping folks like low income residents reduce costs and get the advantages of a clean energy economy. And then innovation and scaling, so leveraging what we're doing here to scale beyond just San Mateo and Las Vegas, of course. All right. For folks who have seen our org chart within programs team, this may look a little different. We have grown considerably over the last year or so. So the programs team reports up to our COO, Shalini. Our director of programs is Rafael Reyes. And then we have we hired Cassandra in the last year, who is doing a lot of great data projects for us. Carlos, who works on a number of different areas, is kind of picking up supporting a bunch of different programs. Peter is our head of distributed energy resources, which is mostly focused right now on government solar and storage, and then our upcoming low income residential solar and storage program. And then Ross reports to Peter, also working on our government solar and storage programs. I oversee our transportation and now kind of our up and coming buildings focus here. So maybe it's a little too much to go through all these names here, but we have a bunch of great people working on our team. I'm happy to get into these areas more and put names to faces if folks have questions, but in the interest of time, let me move on. Okay, so what do we do? A number of different things that impact our day-to-day basis. The first is we're focused really on our decarb strategy, but on a day-to-day basis, we're also procuring services and contracts. We're not doing it just ourselves. We have a number of different partnerships that we're having that we're using to implement our programs, especially our larger programs. Some of them we operate in-house, and then we're managing lots of different things. So we're managing our relationships with our administrators, we're managing our relationships with contractors, we're dealing with customer questions, especially in our new building appliance programs. So people are emailing us with questions on stuff. People are emailing us with questions on EV charging. And so we deal with a lot of customer interactions as well. And then our data analytics, which is Sandra's head. Okay, so I have a number of different ways to explain all the programs that we have going on, but they kind of fall into three flavors here. So the first is our buildings, transportation, again, distributed energy resources. So let's start with transportation, that's my main area of focus. So we have an e-bike rebate program. We have a government fleet program that helps. Well, let me go into a little bit more detail actually. So we have our e-bike rebate program is a low income program. We give up to $1,000 for low income residents to get an e-bike, and it's a point of sale program. So they can go into a bike shop and the bike shop just takes the price right off the receipt, which is great. A number of folks actually got bikes for free because they bought $999 bikes from ELV Motors down in San Jose this year. And we've done over 1,000. That's over 1,000 residents have gotten e-bikes through that program. It's very popular, very fun.
And is it perpetual? Like it just goes on each year?
We've done them 4 years now. Yeah, so it's an annual program. Yeah, exactly. We normally open it in the June timeframe. So yeah, we plan to do that again. Our government fleet program is working with 11 local cities right now on fleet electrification. Oh yeah, go for it.
Are you running out of money in those programs, the e-bikes? No, okay.
Okay. And then
Each year, everybody that wants one gets one.
sorry, let me rephrase. We have closed the program this year because we've run out of our allocated funding, but we have money for next year when we reopen next year. So it's not like the program is done.
Yeah.
This cycle is done. Yes.
It's very popular, so it's like a very
Yes.
short amount of time.
This year is actually open longer than we expected. It was open for about 2.5 months.
No, forgive me.
Oh yeah, so I think we've given 1,000. We've had 2,000 people interact with our program. So we've done a lot. So I think at some point I think we may have reached a ceiling, so we'll have to revisit that. For government fleets, we're working with 11 local cities on fleet electrification. This is really, really important because it's the law now for our local cities to start electrifying their fleets. And that started this year. So a lot of fleet managers that really got them moving. And so now we're doing 11. A number of them are going to start construction within the next year. Menlo Park here has an incredibly ambitious project where they're doing a bunch of charging for their police fleet, their city fleet, and their corporate all at the same time across 3 different areas. But we're helping a number of cities in that regard. Our main project for EV charging is that one at the bottom says EV Incentives. I should put the name here. It's called our EV Ready program. This is by far the biggest program in transportation. It's 16 million plus now in our funding. So really you can think of transportation as this massive bubble and then a couple other small things. Their EV Ready program helps people plan for and pay for the installation of EV charging in the community. So we have free designs that we offer them. We'll design a project for free. We'll refer them to contractors. We'll tell them what chargers they should get, where they should go, how many they should put in, and then we'll help them pay for it. And this is mostly a multifamily program now. So we do help chargers everywhere, including at public agencies and public access, but over 2/3 are at multifamily sites like apartments and condos. So that's the hardest to serve part of the population when it comes to EV charging. And that's the main focus of this program. And we've just crossed 1,200 chargers installed as of today. Yeah.
Just regarding this program, I think I saw a picture at your, maybe with somebody else's, of the apartment building.
Yes.
So they just run surface mounted conduit and a box with a P20 outlet.
Yes.
So there's no chargers, and somebody can buy a pigtail for that outlet for probably $150 and boom, probably get limited EV. So we're not spending money on $3,000-$5,000 chargers.
Yes.
So just thought that's probably the way to make our money go great.
We love outlets. It is the main thing that we do in our program. We love what you're describing is low power level 2 outlets. We also love level 1 outlets. Every single EV in California is required when they get sold to have a level 1 cord set in the car.
Yeah.
And so
useless on a long range EV base.
you don't want to use it for road trips, but if you're plugging in every single day at your assigned parking space, it meets most people's needs. So that's why we like putting them into assigned parking spaces. And actually a lot of EV drivers do charge that way already.
What's a low level 2 charger in amps? Is that 20?
Say that again?
Is that 20 amps?
It's 20 amps, 208 to 240 volt service, so about 3 to 3.3 kilowatts of charging.
And that takes care of the charging for most people.
Yeah, both that and or level 1. Level 1 is about a 95% plus solution. Low power level 2 is about a 98-99% when you're plugging in every day at home.
When you're plugging in every day.
Yes.
Right.
That's why we like putting them in assigned parking spaces. We want everybody to have an outlet before they even get an EV at their parking spaces at an apartment, so they know that their next car purchase can be electric.
A big difference in the range that we put in the car. I think a level 1 overnight gets you about 35.
60 miles overnight. Yeah, about 60 miles overnight. Low power level 2 would be about double that, a little less than double that, about 120 miles.
The average person drives 35 miles a day.
Yes.
So that takes care of most of it,
Exactly.
or all of it.
Yeah, exactly. Even in more rural areas, the largest that people drive in San Mateo County is in Half Moon Bay. So that's the largest part. I think it's over 45 miles a day on average. But most people within the state and within San Mateo County are within that 30-35 miles per day range.
The government fleet program, you're providing technical assistance and grants. And are the grants typically covering all the costs, or is the city required to put in something, or?
Cities are almost always required to put in something. There's a lot of funding out there right now for fleets. So we help them navigate different sources and stack them together. So they can take our funds, they can map on the Inflation Reduction Act provided direct pay incentives for fleets too, which would never existed before. So essentially tax credits that governments can take. So we help them navigate that, plus ours, plus state programs, plus air district funding. If all of that is relevant for their specific project, we'll help them stack all those things together.
Do you do anything for schools and their buses?
Yes, so we're working with we've done EV charging at multiple school districts, and we're doing technical assistance, we're doing fleets for kind of 1.5 of them. A lot of the schools come to us already with technical assistance done. They already hired consultants before they even came to us, so they're just using us for funding. One of them, we're kind of doing a partnership. They got an EPA grant to do buses, and we're looking at layering funding to do a vehicle to building with them to provide backup power. But it's pretty early days on that. But the short answer is yes, multiple fleets, yeah. That one's Half Moon Bay. So they got an EPA, I think that's all public info. They got a big EPA grant, and then we've committed to funding them on top of that, yeah.
I understand none of your funding that you just mentioned is federal funding.
None of it is. Everything I've described, yeah, except for the tax credits that we would be using as a layer on. Yeah, if those go away, that'll make things more challenging for sure. But yes, none of these programs are funded federally. Every program here that I mentioned so far is PCE self-funded. For some, we're using some specific state funds as a small part of it, but these are all our funding. Okay, I'm gonna keep diving here, and then I'll take a pause too for questions. I realize I've been talking for a long time. Moving on to our distributed energy resources programs. So when you think kind of solar and batteries mostly, and then things that turn on and off because of the internet. So we did a solar storage program a couple years ago, and then we're launching a big new one that's going to be next year to help about 200 low-income homes install solar and battery storage. Peter's working on that. And then the big other part of this is solar and in the future storage for government facilities. So we've done, I think about 8 sites have been activated right now. I'm trying to remember, but we have dozens in progress for that program.
Sorry, the
Yep.
low income thing you mentioned, is that
Yes.
the SGIP assistance
Yes,
program?
exactly. Now we're calling it solar and battery savings because SGIP doesn't roll off the tongue. Yes. And then for buildings, we're doing a lot. So again, reach codes helping cities to deal with new construction, and then technical assistance for, it's kind of a small thing that we're just offering for non-residential sites. And then the best for last are huge brand new home upgrade programs. So we've done pilots in the past, we've done whole home electrification for low income homeowners. And then we launched a rebate program a couple years ago. This is now all morphing into our 2.0 program that I'm going to get into in more detail later. But it is the biggest program we've done to help in general, and that's going to be designed to help single-family homeowners move to electrification, either an appliance at a time or a whole home for low-income folks. Oh, I have pictures. Sorry,
Question?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit on your virtual power plant?
Yeah, so that was our Flex Market program, and which is still ongoing. And then as part of the home upgrade, as part of the SGIP program, we're going to be having 200 batteries deployed into low-income homes. So there's going to be an element of a VPP as part of that that's still being thought out. But there's really not much to say yet, but that's going to be a part of it. Yeah, sorry, I'm light on details on that, but it's still early development. So I put this another way to show kind of what's coming up here. So for EVs, I mentioned our EV Ready program, our government fleet program, our used EV rebate program. Oh, actually, I think I skipped that when I was going over. We provide a used EV rebate and our e-bikes program. And really in the next year, we're focused on scaling up these things, especially EV Ready, scaling it to more and focusing on pilots. I'll talk about our sub-metering pilot at the end. And then for buildings, biggest thing we're doing next year is Home Upgrade 2.0 to complement our existing programs, appliance rebates, our gov building electrification incentives, reach codes, technical assistance, and then on the DER side, our upcoming SGIP program to complement what we're doing mostly on solar and storage for government facilities right now, GovPV. All right, I think I just did 10 slides in a row. So should I take a pause if folks have questions? I think I have another 8 or 9-ish.
Clarifying?
Are you stretched? Okay, let's keep rocking and rolling. All right, so some of the highlights that we've done, at our building electrification rebate program, we've done nearly 3,500 appliances, including a massive push recently on HVAC systems, which are the hardest thing to do. But a lot of people are using our rebates for HVAC systems, which is great. I just did our numbers right now. We've done 1,200 EV chargers installed with about 4,000 more in progress. 5 megawatts of solar in progress. I knew it was a couple dozen. So 32 sites, that's our government program. And then I mentioned before how our reach codes had statewide impacts. When we're looking at our low income programs serving underserved communities, we've done nearly 700 rebates. These are used EV rebates. We've done nearly 700 of those. And by the way, people can stack this on the federal credits right now, and we help people do that. In fact, you can stack the federal credit, our rebate, and for folks that qualify, Clean Cars for All. So all that together is up to $16,000 if you qualify for a point of sale discount. And we help people navigate how to do that with our concierge service. So really important really important right now. And then the price of used EVs has been getting really, really good, especially with these rebates. We've done over 1,000 e-bikes and over 300 homes in home upgrade. Oh, this is a picture of the San Carlos Youth Center with the new solar and the funny little solar on the bottom right. I was told there was a vent there, and so they needed to rotate that solar panel. Okay, so pilots. So we've I forgot submetering. I'll talk about that too. So some pilots we've done in the last year, we've tested load shifting using telematics, so using connected car systems. That was an example of a pilot that didn't actually go where we thought it was going to go, and so we're shifting direction there and doing kind of behavior change more now with that. But that was a very interesting test. I'm going to add in real time to this pilot list. We're now testing EV charging submetering. So using chargers as a submeter, we have an open innovation grant right now, and we're reviewing proposals on that. But essentially what this will do is it'll allow chargers to be a submeter, meaning if you're in an apartment and you charge on a charger in your garage, that price can be anything. Your property manager can set that price to charge to whatever they want. And it's typically very, very high. And so high that it undercuts the value of moving to EVs altogether. And so what this submetering will do will allow it when you plug in at a charger in your garage, not connected to your house, it's in a garage separate from your apartment. It'll add that load directly to your own apartment's PG&E bill. And what that will allow you to do is pay much cheaper rates because they won't be marked up. And if you're receiving a care discount, you'll be getting a care discount on your EV charging. So it has a lot of really equity benefits, and we would be the first people to do this because this product doesn't exist yet. So we're going to help. Essentially, we're going to help make it.
What's that called again?
So it's virtual submetering.
Okay.
Yeah. So the state approved the protocol about a year ago, and nobody's done it. No, it's been sitting there and nobody's done. So we're giving some people money to just do it to develop the products.
What do you mean by the code?
So the Utilities Commission created the submetering protocol, which includes a number of safety, certification, data accuracy, communication standards and protocols on how the submeters should work and how the data exchange needs to go through the utility. That took them forever to do. And then it's been sitting on a shelf for years since then.
Oh, so what PC is doing as a energy provider is
Yes,
pushing that forward.
exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
so our the customer is everybody is. That done, you know, we get that.
Yeah.
So
We would add these to our EV Ready program. So when we're installing chargers or outlets at apartment buildings, we're going to ask them to do it this way so that the cost of charging isn't 70 cents a kilowatt hour, or again, whatever the property sets, it'll be what shows up on their PG&E bill. So they'll be just getting those rates instead.
the question, would that hinder or discourage the apartment building owner to install it because they were putting in those lines in the outlets because they were made once?
Yeah, we're gonna have to figure that out. We're gonna have to figure, there may be a flat rate part of this, but we're gonna have to figure that, out. Yes. That is a known unknown.
And just from the Pacifica EV showcase that we had a couple weeks ago, the number one objection for people buying an EV is they have nowhere to plug it in.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
Number
for sure, absolutely.
And it's usually a park.
Yes, that's why we gotta put them in mass before people get their EVs. You gotta put these in at every single spot ideally, so that they see it and then they're like, okay, my car's got 2 years left on it, and then when it goes, I'm gonna get an EV next time. Yeah. Let's see any more hands.
My question was similar to his.
Okay.
So real quick, like the person who wants to use it, they just like have a code, it's their code and it tells them, the machine says charge this apartment. That's kind of how it works.
It'll probably be through an app.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll probably be through an app, but exactly right. A lot of the chargers we're considering as finalists already have access and authentication controls because they do billing through a credit card now. So it would be like removing the credit card billing and then adding this component to it. Yeah.
Does that apply only to the apartment building? Could it apply to a shopping center?
It could, it definitely could. Yeah, so that would be That would be interesting. We're gonna start at apartments, but there are other implications on how it could go
You
out.
go to apartment, you could go to stores, you could go, anyway, cool.
Yeah, exactly. Or governments could basically be giving at cost EV charging. So instead of just guessing on the rates, people would just come up and then it would, they have to be a PG&E customer. So like there'd be some kind of, exchange that would need to happen, but there could be wider implications. Yeah.
Great.
And, oh yeah, when I say apartments, I also mean. Yes. Okay, the next, how am I doing on time? I feel like I've been going for a while, okay. So another really critical thing, and I have more slides on this later to get in more detail, but we are really focused on avoiding service upgrades, both in EV charging for apartment buildings and in single family homes.
Could you say what a service upgrade
A
is?
service upgrade, so is when you call PG&E and say that line that goes to my house or that line that goes to my apartment building does not have enough juice for all of the juice that I want in my house or building. And so PG&E says, okay, we're going to bring in upgraded power, more power to your building to handle the incoming loads that you think that you need, that you're going to electrify.
And charging it.
Sure, yeah, so it used to be, for EV charging in apartments, you might pay nothing, or you may pay 80 grand for this upgrade. It was all over the place. Now when this happens, the ratepayers pay that nothing or 80 grand. So there's benefits to the individual, but the collective still pays for this. So avoiding this not only helps individual customers, it also helps put a check on the increasing costs of energy, which is of course really important. And it takes PG&E a year and a half to do this on average. Right now, their average is 18 months. So, that's lost time that we can't afford to keep.
Wait, Philip, there was a change in the law where they can't charge the individual building owner. Now it's.
Yeah, so
everybody pays for it.
that's right. So for single family homes,
What was
upgrade.
the change?
So for single family homes, there's always a rule that upgraded electrification can only be billed at like small amounts, like engineering fees essentially and things like that, which not small, they're a couple $1,000s, but then the ratepayers pay for them. For non-residential, which multifamily is considered non-residential in the state size, that's not covered by those rules. So they created a new rule a couple of years ago to kind of add similar protections. So before that rule was enacted by the PUC, the Utilities Commission, the cost would be all over the place. We tried to guess what it would be and it was crazy hard to do. But now the ratepayers pay for it.
Okay, so just again, that small end, you're in charge of a few $1,000s.
Exactly. Yeah, but not the 80 grand it'll take to change the transformer.
So what is the actual cost for PG from what you've?
Well, now we don't know. We know in aggregate, they produce these reports in aggregate, but for an individual going through this process, it's basically nothing. But we still want to help them do it. We still want to help them avoid these service upgrades for all the reasons that I just said. And so Blake and our team did an excellent job producing these guidelines on how people can electrify everything within their house within 100 amps, which is the current kind of capacity that most homes have. We also tested a bunch of interesting stuff on the building side. We did whole home electrification for 9 homes. We paid for everything to learn and see what the average costs were and what problems occur when you bring in 3 totally different contractors to all do the same thing. And then we tested harvest thermal, which is a very interesting combined water heating and space heating all in one. Like a space saving opportunity, and there's other kind of interesting cost efficiencies with that too.
Does Harvest offer cooling yet?
They do not that I'm aware of. Yeah, I don't think so.
So number 2, were you able to get that to work with totally electrifying home?
Oh,
Yeah,
Big time.
so of the 9, one of them already had 200 amps, I think, and then one of them upgraded, but I think just that one did. Most did not.
Oh, okay, so most you make it work with 100 amps.
Yes. Yeah, which is also what I'm planning to do with my home as well, personally. And I have a level 1 hot tub, so that's plus everything else, we're gonna try to keep under 100 amps.
And you have to have special equipment, software to kind of load share that stuff.
I'll get into that, yeah, circuit pausers are a part of this, yes.
Could I ask you, was there also a pilot to look at whole home electrification on 100 amp panel homes?
Most of these were 100 amp homes.
Okay, is
Yeah.
that gonna be available online or
Yes,
somehow
so
public?
we are working on publishing this right now, within like the next, I can't say days, but weeks. I'm producing these guidelines publicly. Everything we do, we definitely want to share publicly, and that is a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yes,
Is a part of this longitudinal where you'll be tracking those
yes.
home, okay?
We
And,
added-
like, assessing like what's their max amperage consumption over the course of like a year
Yeah,
to like further promote the fact that like most people use like 19 amps in total.
yes.
Okay.
We added panel sensors to all those homes, and actually, let me just, everybody close your eyes while I jump way ahead. They use 38 amps.
Great.
On average. So a little bit more than 19, but this is an assessment of peak amperage for, in general for single family homes in our territory. And estimated at 38 amps is a typical like max demand. So there's a lot of room available even in these 100.
Over the course of a whole year, the average peak was 38.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so you can do a lot. You can do a lot with 62 amps.
So are you doing the same thing for apartment buildings?
Eventually. Yeah, but the market's not there yet. So for they're just a lot more complicated. So we're gonna start with single family homes. We need to build some momentum with contractors, and then yes, the intent would be that we would move on to single family homes. I mean to multifamily spaces like apartments.
What is the complication?
Was that?
What's the big complication with apartment buildings?
So a lot more power, and then now I'm speaking a little bit out of my area expertise, so give me a little bit of wiggle room here. But I know there's an escalator and complication for like the HVAC systems when you're dealing with like a lot in the same place. You're dealing with you have to site a lot of different condensers when you're doing with these HVAC systems. For single family homes, water heaters, we're actually trying to study this right now, but they're kind of in one of a few places. They're in your garage, or they're in like in a closet, or kind of like somewhere relatively easy. For multifamily, it could be a lot more complicated. I think we do have some too that aren't individual water heaters, like they're like shared or like larger scale stuff. All that stuff we have to learn how to do to kind of get to that level of complication. Yeah.
Sorry, at 38,
Yes.
maximum, that's for a fully electric, single family home. Does that include a home that has an EV charger?
No, so that is the average currently of what we see as the max demand in our territory. So this will include people with AC, this will include people with EV charging, averaged out. So I don't believe we did not pull any we'd have to do this again to do like a specific use case. It's like of the people who have electrified everything, which is a very small number.
Oh, so this is not specifically.
No, this shows us the current landscape.
All over. the
Yeah.
territory.
Exactly.
I see.
How much room do we have to add HVAC and water heaters and things and
Gotcha.
EV chargers to existing buildings? That's what this is going as. Yeah.
Thank you.
So people are not maxing out their panels now, is what this is telling. All right, back to that in a second. In the interest of time, I think I'm gonna skip our board dashboard, but we're doing a lot. And I'll just skip that for now. It'll come back. And mostly here, what I'm saying is that program, we think we're spending a lot. We're always trying to spend more, push more. We're a relatively small part of the overall PC budget. Of course, most of what we do here is buy energy. And so that's 88% of our ongoing costs. Okay, some examples of what we've done at scale over the last couple of years. Cumulatively, we've spent over 60 million in program spending over the last almost 10 years now. Customers have saved 163 million, not just through programs, that's mostly through our discount that we provide for folks. And then again, some of the big stuff coming up, like, see if I have a laser pointer on here. I do, but it disappears. Yeah, it goes on the wall and then disappears on the screen. All right, so that way, our $26 million building electrification program, again, that's the biggest thing we've done. And then big new upcoming programs, like I mentioned, the SGIP solar and storage program, what we're doing with public agencies. Hey, Caltrain uses our power, and now their last diesel train left 2 months ago. They're now completely all electric, which is great. And then looking at major new developments like the Brisbane Baylands and how we serve them as an organization.
Sorry, what's PPP?
Oh, public purchase funds. So
Might be PPM.
it's public purchase programs. Thank you. Yes. That's how we fund all of our stuff, sort of. But it's all, but I'm thinking we're all internally funded this far, yeah.
The last one, the Brisbane Baylands, can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah,
That's a
so
heavily contaminated site, I know that.
I mean, it is moving forward.
It is.
We have nothing to do with the decontamination part of it, but that project, one of the requirements of the development is that they be net neutral on their energy. So we are working, I don't know what how developed these conversations are now with the developer, but we are working with them on what that could look like. So on-site generation, on-site storage, and how we can work with them to serve that. It's gonna be like 2,000 apartments or so. It's gonna be ginormous. It's gonna be humongous.
That's gonna be a number of years in the
Yeah.
making, yeah.
Yes, I would imagine, yes.
What is that, TM?
Front of the meter, sorry,
got it.
before the energy comes to their homes. Yes.
Sorry, what is the significance of the less than 3% funded by PPP?
I knew I should have put that in there. I forgot to look that up. That was one that I had not put it, and I realized right now, I was looking at this right now, I do not want to know what that means. Let me get back to you on that, John. Okay, some of the challenges that we're looking at in the next year. So I don't think it is any shock. It is very expensive. Electricity is very expensive. Everybody knows this. I think we are second behind SDG&E, which passed Hawaii recently as the most expensive rates in the country. That's a real problem for us. Yes.
James, I think I've asked around about this before. So the way that PCE bills its customers.
Yes.
Basically at the PG&E generation rate, less about $1. Sure.
On a monthly basis, you mean?
Yeah, on a month.
Yeah, so
as PG&E was raising the rates, right, but PCE's costs was basically level.
yeah,
There should be additional profit to PCE, and I'm just wondering where is that money going? Is it going back to the program, or is it gonna go buy down
right.
future rates, or what's just happening?
So the answer to your question is sort of. So for PCE's first 6 years of an organization, it was PG&E's generation rates minus 5%. That was what it was. A few months ago, we switched that to look at what our average cost of actually buying electricity is, and then we base our discount on that. So some years the discount, if our costs are low and PG&E's generates stay kind of high, then our discount would be bigger. And of course, the opposite could occur, but that has not happened yet. But so now our discounts are, I don't know what the number is, but it's greater than 5% now. And then PG&E is lowering their generation rates, so that will impact that, but it is not a strict 5% anymore. Now it's more tied to the actual cost of buying electricity.
Did you say PG&E is lowering their rate?
Their generation rates. Yeah. I think I know they're also increasing their distribution rates. But yeah, I don't know what the wash will be. Yeah.
Higher,
Yeah, the rates are gonna go up higher.
yeah. That's
Problem
right.
with distribution.
Right, but yeah, the gen rate is going down a little bit. So that's most relevant for us. Yes.
So this will be important when we talk to people, like, is it no longer the policy that PCE will always be less than PG&E? Like, it's now possible that if PCE's costs go up and PG&E's costs stay the same or go down, that PCE's generation cost could be more than PG&E to the customer?
But highly unlikely.
Okay,
Yes. And right now we're greater than 5%. Yeah, so possible, but unlikely.
Well, is it possible that everybody wants to buy solar power across the country, that solar rates would go up for PCE when it buys it?
Well, we have a mix of long-term contracts and short-term contracts, and then we buy on the spot, on like the day ahead markets. So I mean, again, I don't buy power. So I'm speaking a little bit out of my channel here. But we buy mostly through our long-term contracts. So that you would be talking about a long-term trend. Okay,
Because it came up,
yeah.
historically, until this year, the rate is set by PG&E sort of in February, is that right? What's the month?
I don't remember.
It's set once a year and then PCE adjusts to that. And that becomes the plan. This year it got changed because of what Phil was just describing.
Yeah.
But I think that we will all know and the public will know before anything bad happens, so we can talk about it. It's not happening at random.
If we do it twice a year?
It's twice a year. Okay.
Yeah.
But Leslie comes and tells us.
Yeah, that's a big Leslie board meeting. Yes, exactly. Okay, but going back to our challenges here. So this is the number one. This is the number one problem. It is really hurting for folks who are completely dependent on the public fast charging network because those prices are even higher. And then for building electrification, it's more muddled, and so that's why the results of our kind of analysis that we're showing cost savings are going to be really important, switching from gas to electricity. But if you see high electricity prices, people have the perception that they're not going to save money, and so we need to make that very clear when you're switching from like a gas water heater to an electric water heater that there are those benefits. But it is a major factor, both in reality and perception, depending on the appliance.
Is the gas price going
Gas prices are going up. I don't know what the year-over-year increase is compared to electricity off the top of my head. But both have gone up a lot. And I know gas rates are also a lot more seasonal and fluctuate a lot more than electricity rates do. But I don't know where they are right now. Okay, so power outages, again, creating both real and perceived problems, especially regarding building electrification. So a lot of folks still have the perception, like if they had 3 days without power, that's like a really impactful event. For some folks, you can use some gas appliances when the power is off. You may have to manual start it with the lighter and you won't be able to vent. But like gas is still seen as a resiliency measure in the event of power shut off. So that's a headwind that we're gonna have to deal with for building electrification. Upcoming, oh yeah.
Is there a way of quantifying power outages? In my neighborhood,
Yes.
we were going 4 a year. Now we're down to 0.
Yes, we're working on that.
Is there a way to quantify it so the public can have a better perception? I don't think it's as much as a problem as it used to be.
Yeah.
That's just anecdotal, I know, but.
Yes. So we can do it kind of down to a circuit level, but it's based on the data sets that we have. It's very tricky to know with high levels of confidence which houses are on which circuits. And so one thing that Cassandra worked on is data analytics, is trying to identify customers that have had multiple outages of long duration, like longer than 8 or 12 hours, that could be candidates for batteries in a future program like the ESTR program that we're working
But
on.
it also would work on perception of the public that outages are an issue.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
The big thing on that is if there's a lot of above ground wires, then those get hit in the storms, trees and stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're on that circuit, you're gonna be down a lot more
Yeah.
than if you're in an area where it's all underground.
Yes.
So
The
it does make a
outages,
difference.
the outage analysis we looked at are both planned and unplanned outages in that regard. But again, it's really hard to kind of identify in the data sets that we have.
Whether power is overhead or underground also affects that.
Oh, for sure.
If you're in a high wind area,
Yes.
it's the same thing. If it's above ground, it's gonna get shut off more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go through quickly here in the last ones, but there is a ban on new gas water heaters coming up in the next couple of years. And so, a lot of what we're doing in our programs is building up momentum to help, get confidence when these things start rolling into effect in a couple of years. And then, of course, the big challenge we have is we cannot do this on our own. We cannot scale to levels that we need just with PCE funds. So areas in particular that Raphael is looking into are iBank and different types of financing discussions to do this. And so we've started doing financing in the last couple of years. We've become kind of a financing organization by giving on bill financing at 0% for folks to fund building electrification. Then they pay that back over 5 years on their bill. We're now doing financing with government building electrification too at a 1% interest rate. So giving them a loan that they end up paying back. So this is an area that we're definitely getting more into ourselves, and then are looking at third-party financing to leverage for more in the future.
Question.
Yes.
On the AQMD rules, can you talk a little bit more specifically about what PC is doing to set things in place to ensure that those rules stay on track?
Yeah, so Blake is heavily involved in those conversations right now. I know his focus in that area on the 27 the ban on new gas water heater sales is they're looking at like what exceptions could be made. Some of them are going to be specific, like equipment exceptions, like edge case things, like small water heaters, or like things that might be too complicated, or like the major manufacturers are not serving yet. That's kind of the area of focus right now. And then building confidence in this is also showing cost savings. So demonstrating through our data that when people switch from gas appliances to electric water heaters, they are not paying more. In fact, they're paying less. So heat pumps are very efficient. And so part of that is building like the kind of social capital that we need as these rules start to go into effect.
Will that cost information be available by December 4th?
Probably. Yes. Yeah.
Is Blake on the implementation working group?
For the AQMD? Yeah, I believe I don't know the name of the working group that he's, but
There's 40 members that are on the implementation working group. I'm hoping Blake is on that.
If it's the Air District's working group, then yes.
Okay.
Yes. And of course, we're also collaborating very closely with all of our CCA sister organizations on this. I knew I had a slide here. Yeah, okay, so energy rates have doubled for PG&E, and SDG&Es, I guess, we're already high because now they're the highest in the country. Woo. Oh. Yeah, woohoo, exactly. I looked at their on-peak EV rates, and I think I saw an 8 as the first one, like 80 cents per kilowatt hour up there. It's I mean, on-peak is high, but that's really high. Okay. So as I was mentioning before, I've been kind of teasing a lot of these. A big area of focus in our programs is dealing with these. Your 100, 125 amp home panel that probably hasn't been touched in 30, 40 years. For multifamily sites, we're dealing with them that have been touched since the 60s. This is a big area. So we need we're trying to figure out how people can work with what they got. So for apartments, we are replacing panels because some of them electricians literally I will not touch this. But we're not putting in new service. We're upgrading just to a newer panel, one that is known to catch on fire, for instance, which is extremely common. Yeah, extremely common.
Those aluminum ones.
The Federal Pacifics are the big ones. The FPE panels and Cisco panels are the other ones. So the power rating going into them is fine, but the breakers are known to not trip when they're supposed to. And so we pull all those. So we pulled out dozens of those now. We've also gone to apartment buildings that's seen fuse boxes still with the glass fuses. Yeah. So not great. Yeah, you wouldn't want to put a car on that. And there's a ton of uncertainty still for people's home panels, right? And a lot of conversation on this. How do you do it? Do I need to, the expectation still for a lot of these is that you're going to need to do this. Like everybody should just get their 200 amp panel now. Or for multifamily, like everybody should just upgrade their service now. And PG&E does not have the capacity to do this. If 100,000 new upgrades were happening on top of the current volume now, it would be impossible for PG&E to do that.
You just said in your other slide, we only needed 100 amps.
Exactly, we don't need it. So what I'm saying is the status quo still is that way, but yes, you're right, we are chipping away at that status quo. Through what I already told you, there's a lot of room on the panel existing. So this, again, this is for single family homes, but the right sizing approach that we're talking here, basically providing right solutions, not overbuilt solutions, but like right solutions for what people typically need, also applies to EV charging, and that's why we love level 1 outlets. Here's a bunch that we helped put in our rental apartment building in San Mateo. We could put in 60 of these without a service upgrade.
Is that the one where you just use the charger that comes with your car?
Yes, yeah, by law, every EV has to have a level 1 port
It
set.
doesn't look big enough to do that.
I promise it does. Yeah, I promise it does. And so that's these, to give you a sense of context why this works so well, not only from avoiding grid upgrades, which is really important, it's just a lot cheaper. So for us to provide, because we have to install like 70,000 of these really is what we really need to get to locally. The state needs to install 1.1 million chargers in the next 5 years. Level 2 charging is somewhere around $12,000 to $18,000 each. Those like the charge point chargers we have. Those are probably closer to the 20,000.
A level 2 circuit with a, I forgot what you call that, the dryer.
Yeah, like a DEMA, for a 20 amp 240 volt circuit. Yeah, so those will be similar in cost to these, but we can only put in so many without a service upgrade.
But can you wire those up, but then put it through a load sharing piece of?
Yes, yeah. So I don't have any pictures on here, but that also happens.
So
So
what it does, it allows you to put more juice in the car for a road trip. Because people want to have that car ready and fully charged for the road trip.
yes, so there are smarter ways of doing this too that we're also working with that have more advanced features like that, where you can load balance it, go up a little bit or go down a little bit to a low power level 2 level. I can talk to you more in detail about this, but there's a lot of interesting companies doing cool stuff.
Do you
just
have a white paper for this that we can show people if we run into friends that
yeah.
in a family that live in these situations? We go like, give this to your landlord or something.
Well, we definitely have like recruitment oriented materials for this program for that. And the next big thing here is we're going to be we have a case study that we're working on and how to reduce the cost to drivers through different project design, which is our next big case study on this. But yeah, we love this stuff. You can put a lot of these in right away, which is what we really need.
You'll put that stuff on the website.
Oh yeah.
So if they, Mr. Contractor, go to this site.
Yeah, our EV charging program is open now. So contractors can apply, property management firms can apply.
Is it commercial too or just residential?
It is everywhere, but mostly at apartments.
So I'm talking about the white paper.
Oh, yeah. But for recruitment, we're not gonna give a white paper to that's not a good recruitment tool, but we have different intake marketing folks, yes. The nice thing is actually people are coming to us now too. I mean, we still need to do a lot of work for recruitment, but now when residents ask for charging, it is getting people to come to us. Okay, so what's next? Real quick here. I think I must be low on time here, so I'll try to speed through this. A lot of things are happening. The whole organization is moving to more customer-centric delivery. So we've just hired 4 people for an internal call center that we're ramping up. These folks are going to be able to help folks. I mentioned concierge services on EV charging. We're also doing concierge-like services for building electrification that we've hired someone on our programs team to be doing. So get your questions answered on all that. How many outages did I have in the last year? We'll be able to look it up ideally with this tool and then can recommend battery solutions to them based on that information. Our turnkey concierge service, all of that is what I mentioned is part of that. A lot of new stuff is happening in GovPV. We're on our 2nd round now. We're eventually going to add batteries. We're talking about maybe owning some systems, unclear yet. I mentioned a sub-metering pilot and then ramping up EV charging is a big focus on transportation. So our big new new home upgrade program for single family homes. I've been talking about this a lot. It's our biggest program to date. There's a few big things here that we're working on developing. Of course, we're trying to scale to the whole home for low income homeowners. We're going to be doing turnkey. They'll just come in and do everything for them. Increase the number of homes. We want to get to a couple hundred. Turnkey services means working closely with contractors that we directly work with. technical assistance, like I mentioned, we have internal resources that we're building up for that, and an online one-stop shop services for folks that are also wanting to do it more themselves. And then third is our residential programs for batteries. So this is again our STRIP program, where we're looking at how big batteries do people really need? Are they buying too much? So like, let's give them a right size approach there as well. And then I think I'm just gonna end quick. We're trying to do a lot in this area. We're working on building in feedback opportunities, really taking things up to the next level for engaging with folks at scale, and then providing them stuff that they didn't even think that they needed before that they need them. Okay, I must be out of time. There we go. All right, out of slides and probably out of time.
I think like 3 more minutes.
Okay, great. Yes.
Is PC doing anything about vehicle to home?
Yeah, we've studied it twice now. Once a couple years ago, and then once again last summer. So residential vehicle to home is very, very hard.
Very hard.
Yes. So PG&E is putting a bunch of money in. They now have an open program that they've had for over a year now, maybe over 2 years now, to pilot these systems, and they've done 2. And none of them are grid export. They're all just back of the meter, backup power only. There's 0.2% of EV market share can do this in our territory. It's only a handful of cars is the problem. It costs about 20 grand to get the system installed at your home. And for that cost, you can just install a battery that doesn't need to go anywhere and can discharge every single day and be available on an ongoing basis to save you more money than your car would. And again, it doesn't drive away. So right now, the major challenges there are PG&E interconnection issues, the cost to do the install, and then no real clear financial advantage at this point yet. They're still even really figuring out how to bill it. So it's pretty complex.
Is anybody doing it anywhere?
In Europe, yeah, in the UK, V2G is a lot more common.
They have different EVs over there?
They do have different EVs over there. Yeah, I mean, they make even North American companies will make a European version of their cars. But yeah.
They can reverse, they can charge the home.
Yeah, and they're doing grid export too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, so not just home power, but export power too. I mean, more common, it's probably tens of thousands versus 2. It's not millions, but it's still pretty good.
Where are they getting?
Fleet, though, it's really advantageous, and I think there's a lot to do there with fleets, but homes is hard, yeah.
In the European model, where are they getting the power? In an office building where they work? Where do they get their power?
I was talking about residential. So this would be at home backwards.
Where do they get the power of the car to take to the home?
Oh, yeah, no, so it's charging during some hours and discharging during other hours to serve grid needs. So all of that's happening at home in this scenario.
And is it clean? Is the original power clean?
Now you're asking good. I mean,
That's an extra
presumably you're getting paid by the utility to discharge just because they need more power.
I want to hear questions and comments from folks we haven't heard from yet today also as well. I can sit in uncomfortable silence for a while. Yeah, I'm good at this.
I have a question. I know you mentioned a couple of days ago, we don't have to go super deep into it, but you mentioned that a couple of these slides are now updated. Are there significant changes that would need to be implemented based off the information that you, that's a terrible question. Basically, I'm saying, is there anything big that you have changed course on for
No, I'm just being speculative, right? I'm just speculating, right? I mean, if the Inflation Reduction Act were to go away, that would have major implications on how we would think about funding opportunities for cars and home electrification. For instance, like right now you can go to a dealer and get $4,000 off the price of a used EV right at the point of sale, which is pretty significant. That would be a very different market context if that were to happen, and we'd have to figure out how to deal with that. Same thing with building electrification. Our programs do not receive federal funding in this way, but the market would be different. So I was being a little maybe coy. maybe a little outwardly cathartic.
When you were talking about the car using those as as battery.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand what's wrong with just behind the meter, so you don't have to deal with PG&E.
Oh, no, PG&E still has to approve, even if you're not discharging to the grid, PG&E still has to approve it. They treat it like it's an interconnect.
Oh, so for me to buy like a Ford 150 truck.
Yep.
And plug my washing machine in my garage into that, the outlet of the
Oh, no,
truck.
that you can do without PG&E. Yeah. You can plug a 120 into the bed of the truck all day long. I mean, that's all fine. But plugging in your panel so that your house automatically switches to your truck's power when the grid goes down, even if you're not selling your power back to the grid, that still requires PG&E approval.
Your old panel is behind the meter.
Yes. Yep.
It's checking. Who's the pretty
Oh, you're not gonna get a permit for all the work that you need to do without PG&E approval. So it's basically like solar. It's essentially like you're adding a generator service. Do it.
You're talking about somebody in
I
the
mean,
county, right?
in fairness to PG&E, you're adding a significant generating source. So if they think a line is down and it's not, that's a problem for them.
You also think you're behind the meter, doesn't it? You're not going through PG&E's.
Well, if you set up your system to discharge to the grid, like you do with solar power, that would be for energizing sections of their
I'm
system.
saying your truck, it'd be just powering your house, not going
Yes,
through the meter.
I hear what you're saying. They want to approve your transfer switch, your disconnect. They want to be sure that you are not sending power back to the grid.
Okay, so you'd have to pull a PG&E permit.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't want to give you one, is that what's the problem?
No, they've worked on setting up these processes for a while. It's the companies I know that are trying to do it say that it is still a messy process with PG&E. I mean, PG&E's own program that have only done 2, but it's also, that's not the only problem. There's also pretty high costs to doing this with not any real clear value versus just putting a battery. So there's multiple kind of
Maybe
problems.
you're better off just plugging everything directly into the truck and call it a day.
You could do that.
I want to make a comment, Phil, that I think you're spending the appropriate amount of time on staff-wise on that issue.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. For fleets, I'm all for it. We're helping those school buses in half of there.
Or can I ask you about the home upgrade program
Yeah,
when
go for
that's set to launch?
So we've already started recruiting homes into it now for the turnkey element of it. So this is the low income whole home part of it. We're going to be doing more recruitment, getting folks into the door to start the energy assessments, so the home assessments. So that's open now. And if folks, want to apply for that now, you can. We expect to start installs, not this year. We'd be starting those next calendar year. And then the other elements of the program will be ramping up over time. So the one-stop shop, the rebates are open now. You can still, we never stopped doing that. You can still just apply for a rebate on your own, as with the on-bill financing. But the concierge services will probably be starting that, ramping up over time in the new year with more and more functionality. And the emergency water heater, we don't have a specific start date for that, but it'll be next year.
If a low-income homeowner applied today,
Yes.
what's the timeline for them having a fully electrified home?
Well, we haven't done any fully electric, we haven't done any installs
So
yet.
if they said, I'm a low-income homeowner, I want to take you up on this offer,
Yes.
I want you to fully electrify my home, like when can they expect that work to be complete?
I can't tell you yet.
Okay.
But right now we're starting assessments. So, I mean, that will start happening quickly. So getting our contractors out, looking at the site, we can't do every home. Like there are homes that we may say we can't do this because of complications in the house. Like if the roof really needs major rework or other things that are like happening and why we couldn't do it. So that all is happening now. But I don't have an exact ETA yet when construction would start. It's still a very, very, very new program.
There's a little bit of money for minor home repairs, or no?
ducting and things like that can be covered, but we're still figuring this out still. We're still figuring out exactly what things we can do and things we can't do.
To piggyback off of that, so the home electrification, definitely a very, very good thing. Not gonna take away from that, but a lot of the homes that have been in service for a long time, they have really poor like weatherization and other bits. Are those
Yeah.
also part of that at all, or?
Let me get back to you. I'm not sure.
This is one of the first times I've been excited about the more multifamily approach. It's always been single family before, right? Generally speaking, in the
This
recent
is-
past.
This program, building electrification, is starting with single family homeowners.
Right, but I mean, you have all these already existing plans for doing what you were showing, having getting the chargers in for apartments.
Oh, yeah,
Attacking
EV
that.
charging is
EV
focused
charging,
on
yes.
apartments, yes.
But are there things, any of us, and I know I'm looking at you really open, as a CEO, is there anything that you'd want to push for early on, or you didn't hear, you were expecting to hear, or anybody else as part of this launch? Not, I think it's wonderful. I just wonder if there's anything that Philip should hear from us, that the community might need. Because we've always kind of been doing these great programs, but there's pieces to that. Is there anything that you guys can think of that might be, that Philip should hear now?
No, we just had the marketing meeting with Rose that might be stealing a little bit Cheryl's report, but one of the things we did talk about was like emergency repairs.
Yes.
For, you know, when the water heater goes out, people don't care, they want that thing replaced yesterday.
Yes.
And for the same or less cost
Yes.
than, you know, those fancy ones.
We'll be doing that.
So
Yes.
we should have some money to kind of equalize it so that those gas water heaters don't get replaced with gas.
Yeah, so the plan is for the emergency track on that, we're gonna put a water heater within like 48 hours. Like it's, you need it right now. So if we can't do an electric heat pump, like there's no opportunity to do a 120 volt. Like if there's not already an electrical outlet near where the water heater is, if there is, we'll use it. We'll be like, great, here's your new water heater, ready to go. If there's not already an electrical outlet by the water heater, which will probably be somewhat common, then we need to add it. So then it becomes a project. In that case, we essentially have a loaner, like a gas loaner, just something you can put in immediately and then for free. And on the condition that we come back and put an electric one when we can arrange for an electrician to come up and add the outlet, look at your panel, do all the things that we would need to do that. But yeah, that is a very important part of it.
And you said there were 110 ones.
I mean, if there's a 220, if there's an open 220 outlet there that we can use, great. I don't know how common that is, but there's 120 volt options. So those are all things, we actually even tested some of those in our first round. But those would be opportunities, yeah.
And they work, right?
They do work, yeah, they do work. You wanna have a little bit of a bigger one, but they do work, yeah.
So if there was a 120 volt available, would you be putting in a 120 powered?
Yeah, we can.
But would that be the permanent, would that be the loaner?
That would be the permanent one, if we can get away with it. Yeah, I mean, it saves us the opportunity. We don't wanna come back if we don't have to.
It would give the same amount of heating capacity.
Yeah, exactly. Now, for the 121s, the tanks to be a little bigger. So as long as you have space, then that would be an immediate great solution, essentially. Just roll it in with a 65 gallon tank or something like that, plug it in, and then boom. That would be a great.
Are the 220 tanks the same size?
Those tend to be, yeah.
Question.
I'll go for it.
In an emergency situation, could you put in a 120 volt heat pump water heater if there wasn't an outlet nearby and use an extension cord for a period of time and then come back and put in an outlet?
Probably not, but I don't know. I can take that question back too. I would.
Well, that's not a good idea. It's not a good idea.
Yeah, I don't, I mean,
Never gets
I live in Bernal Heights in San Francisco, and that is how people charge their cars. They run their extension cords to the trees from their house down.
Not permanently, it's allowed data electric.
Oh, on a temporary basis, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm saying,
But you
my
get 90
neighbors are
days,
doing
yeah.
it permanently, but I don't think you can make that into our program. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, good suggestion, let me take that back to the team and that's a good suggestion.
The floor is thick.
Yeah.
Don't use a little thin.
Right, yeah, no.
I just wanna, I've done a lot with them, and at most they use about 5 amps. So 5 amps isn't a huge amount to push through for it, so I think it actually has a lot of legs.
Well, I'm gonna get a counter argument. I don't see a city ever approving it.
Yeah,
But just
not on a
temporarily.
permanent basis.
Temporarily
Yeah,
for cities.
for
No,
seven-
I wasn't suggesting permanent.
Yeah.
Personally, I suggest you don't do that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And then one other quick question, the 2025 energy code,
Yeah.
there's a possibility that cities could adopt a reach code on top of that. That
Yes.
would say, when your air conditioning system goes out, you need
Yes.
to replace it with a heat pump.
Yes.
Will PCE offer a rebate in that situation when the homeowner's not taking out their furnace? And just replacing their air conditioning, but in reality, they're probably gonna use their heat pump during the winter?
Well, so that wouldn't go into effect until January 2026.
Right.
So I think let's deal with that.
Cross that bridge.
Now, let's cross that bridge later, yeah.
It's only a year out.
Ah.
I don't think it's.
Yeah. Let's get to that later, yeah. That's a good question.
Are there any people who have not spoken who'd like to speak on this subject? Please. Okay, is there any
All right.
public comment?
I'm not seeing any public comments right now.
Thank you, Phil, that was fantastic.
See everybody.
Thank you.
You bet, thanks.
Great.
If people have specific questions for this, can they reach out to you through okay, the next thing is in your packet is the approval of the meeting schedule, and I want Kirsten, I assume Kirsten, right? Tell us the results of your survey, or Vanessa, excuse me.
Actually.
Yeah, so thanks everyone for filling out a survey on how to plan for our next schedule or schedule for next year's meetings. As you saw in the agenda packet, we put together a proposed schedule based on your feedback, which keeps the current date, Thursday, and time 6:30. Basically, from the results, almost everyone preferred Thursday, so we wanted to honor that time. We did see interest in starting the meeting earlier from quite a few folks, but that unfortunately didn't work for everyone's schedule. So we decided to honor the 6:30 since that would work for everyone.
And the second, third Thursday of the month.
Yes. So,
Status quo, right?
yes.
Except in November and December.
Mhm.
Does anyone have any comments or complaints in advance on this one? Who in the public does not like this plan? Okay, then should we do, I don't think we have an action item, do we? Or do we? Do we do?
We
So
do.
could I get a motion?
Actually,
Oh,
we have everyone in the room, so we wouldn't need to do a roll call,
just do a voice
but
vote.
we need a, yeah, a motion.
Okay. Could someone make a motion to approve the time?
I move that we second.
Michael and Robert?
Okay.
Okay, and then you just do a voice vote?
I don't actually know how to facilitate that.
We can just do
But-
anybody, all in favor,
I think
say aye,
we
all
all-
opposed, and no one says anything?
Yeah,
Or all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? There being none, it passed unanimously. Okay, great. So the next thing is working group. Before we get into working groups, I want to thank, because I've seen them all night and haven't said anything. I'd love them to provide any comments they might want to, but also if you don't, that's fine, if you want to go home. But directors and councilpersons Colson and Mackin are here again. I want to thank them for championing our causes here and participating. So thank you very much. I meant to say that earlier.
They're already home.
What?
So aren't they already home?
Yeah.
They wanna go home.
It's fine. Well, the rest of us. Thank you. Director Colson, do you want to say, Chair Colson, do you want to say something?
No, it's been very interesting, sort of watching this all go down and, this meeting and a lot of really good topics. I think you did a really nice job, Chairman Mendelson, at the beginning, trying to encourage people to speak. And maybe you and I can talk offline and Jen can join you, but I think there's some ways that you could run this meeting with a little more protocol of running through the chair and a little more structure and format that might encourage some of the other people to speak up, as opposed to so much of just a round table, everybody sort of talking over each other and speaking. So you guys have to think about it. It's your meeting. You have to run it how you want. But I appreciate that more people speaking would be a good idea. And that might be a way to achieve it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, all right, so the next thing is our working group reports. And I'm gonna go through the list. And if you don't have anything, that's okay, but I know some of us do. So the first one is the Strategic Planning Committee. Do they have anything to report? Okay. The next thing is, and I would encourage you to get this, even if it's just we met and we did something, let us know at the next meeting too, because I think this is where a lot of the action's happening too. All right, next is building electrifications. Do we want to report on that one? John?
No.
Well, when we met, we got good insight from you'd want to say that?
We're meeting next week, so I don't have anything to add.
But we met between the two meetings, haven't we? Not the same day, okay, all right. Well, we have been meeting, we have met many times. So-
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, we're meeting.
Okay. How about the transportation working group?
Yeah, actually, we did meet and Carlos came back with some of our questions. We talked about used EV models. Good news is they came down on price significantly and confirmed that, the sampling was using just EV. So there are a lot more models out, 5,000. Great, same the average new cars are 50. So that was very clear. And then they talked about working with grid alternatives, and then something about the outreach grant program and so there's a lot of great stuff going on building side. Again, what Philip was saying about apartment owners, trying to reach out to that. And following up with surveys, customers bought one meter. Other things, so Carl's gonna follow up, price use gas vehicles, so we care that we need important and look into, having more EV work trucks. Great, that's. Then, he's gonna look at making it very clear. Set. It's probably coordinated, so. It's pretty much it. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good working group report. It was a good example.
Thanks, Carlos, I was just reading.
That's a good example, and then that way the other working groups can hear what you're up to, cross-pollinate in this meeting, yeah.
And then Carol, for the marketing strategy group.
Yeah, we've met a few times. In the last meeting that we had with Gwen, she went through the enormous project of doing a new website for BCE, which is just, looks overwhelming to us. But it's going to be an essential part, obviously, of everything that's coming up soon, especially the home electrification marketing program. So she's trying to get that website up by actually December 19th. So that's where most of her energies are going at this point. And it's going to have it's going to be we've mentioned customer centric a lot tonight. It's going to be very customer centric with something like an incentives finder, which is great. You can really get on the website and find things easily. She actually walked us through, we met today at noon, and she walked us through sort of the brand structure for how this new home electrification program would work, and the internal documents, not the messaging for the internal documents, not the messaging for the public, but it looked very thorough and very thoughtful. She showed us all of that, and she wants to establish an emotional connection. This is something she talked about several times, and be very focused on the customer experience. So they actually hired a consultant, a customer experience consultant, to help them understand how to have appropriate and proper and what's the word, invigorating sort of touch points with customer along the way, She said at each stage of the journey, it really requires a different form of communication and a different tool for customers. So it was impressive, how thorough and how thoughtful they're being about the whole thing. So we're gonna keep our fingers crossed that she gets the website launched when she wants to by the 19th. And that's important because obviously you heard Philip talk about how very soon they're gonna be starting the soft beginning of the home electrification program. So
I had a quick request from our earlier meeting, and I wish Gail was here, but it's for Kathleen and Michael and Cheryl. In the last year's working group, we did a project for Peter, where we tracked down what other similarly situated bodies had done in the DER space and solar plus storage space. What I promised Gwen, I would ask all of you this too, but specifically that group, if there was anything on a website that was particularly eye-catching or gave you an emotional response or had any sort of great prototype, I would encourage you to find that and send it directly to Gwen as an example of, I remember we did my Vermont project. It was a really great interface on this page. Or when I saw one of the ones you looked at, the program wasn't very good, but the way they sold it was really good. So they can use that here as models, because I just figured we already did it last year. We have like 50 examples. So I would encourage anybody that did that already, go back and look at your notes and see if there's a particular interface or web thing that was interesting. I think that what they're gonna do is gonna be great, but it can't hurt to have other examples for that. Okay, is there any public comment on the working groups? Okay, the next is your guy, that's Vanessa and Kirsten's marketing and community liaison update, please.
All right, I'll start off that, Vanessa, I don't think give credit here, has set up a tracker for us to track the recommendations that the CAC has made. And then I report back regularly to you on the status of those. That said, we set up the tracker, but we need the rest of the staff to fill it in. So we're working on getting them to get you the updates. We hope to start giving you our first updates of that at your next meeting.
that's great. Thank you. That's so nice for us to have updates and input and responses. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You said you were going to do that. I appreciate you came right back with it. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
On that subject, can I make a request? Phil had a slide of the org chart up there at one point, and I thought, it would be so helpful to just have a copy of the PC org chart. Because, we have so many people come talk to us, and I can't always keep track, who's where and who they're working with.
That was actually a partial though. That was
a partial one.
Yeah.
I'd love to have one.
Yeah, that was just.
Yeah, that would be nice. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll work on that. We're growing a lot, so we'll need to make sure we find the most updated version. But thanks for that suggestion. Also wanted to give an update on our appliance rebates. And so some of the amounts have changed as of November. And so on our website lists our updated rebate amounts, but specifically for the heat pump water heater, we've seen that we want to get more movement and more interest in that. So we've increased the rebate to $2,500. And then for the heat pump HVAC system, as Philip mentioned, got a lot of interest in that. And so we've reduced the rebate amount for that to $1,500.
What was the old number?
Previously, the HVAC was 20, or sorry, I think it was 2,500. And then, okay, I see John nodding, and then the water heater was 2,000. So we're updating our marketing materials and media toolkits. We'll get that to you all and continue to share information about how that stacks with any additional and new programs that are coming down from the state. I saw a hand.
Yeah, speaking of the organizational part, the other day, just I happened to be looking at the website. And I saw that there are a lot of new staff members.
Yes.
And I counted, on my count, we now have 55 staff members.
I heard there were over 60 actually.
And I have to say, I'm shocked at the size of the organization. Presumably, everybody's doing great work. But that's pretty expensive to have 60 staff members too. I mean, I don't know what to say about it, but you know, it's, is there any limits to our growth? Presumably it's costing us a lot more in terms of administration, right? Or does that fit in more into programs than administration? I don't know. I mean, presumably the board is watching this, right? But it seems like we've become a pretty massive organization. I'm not saying it's bad. But do people know that we have 60 staff members? I remember when we used to have like 12.
When I look at that report though, of what Phil was talking about doing, I'm amazed they can do everything with the staff they have.
Just hoping, back when we were 5 people, we worked extremely hard.
Yeah.
So it's, I think it's been an effort to right size the organization considering the ambition of what we're trying to get done.
No, we're trying to do great work. And there's even more to be done.
Do you ask for like a report or somebody to talk to us about
Well,
that?
I know there's a couple of board members here, presumably they're watching this issue. I don't know. There are costs and benefits from having a growing staff.
Well, first of all, I'm happy to respond if through the chair, if the chair would so wish.
Of course.
But I would also want to ask the attorney, is this within the purview of the agenda and may I speak on this? I don't know if June's there.
I'm here. I'm sorry. I thought I was not on mute. This is, I think, within the scope of this agenda item. If we want to discuss it further beyond a few sentences, then we should definitely agendize a report from PCE staff.
Okay, so if it's the chair's pleasure, so PCE has been growing at a rate that has been budgeted every year. We look at it in the budget cycle and determine what types of positions need to be filled and then how we're going to fill them. As the programs have increased and become more complex, they have required more staffing. And as we build out and continue to work on our energy resources, we've added resources with Roy's group. And then we also have added more people in finance. We've had to hire an HR person. Some of this growth is just the nature of being a bigger organization. We have a larger C-suite now with 3 executives plus the HR component. We've had to bring in people for tech. But the nice thing about it is, even when you put the staffing within our budget, the staffing and the office space and sort of the administration of PCE is just a tiny increment of the gross revenue that we bring in. And even after we pay our required bills, we still have an enormous amount of capital to reinvest back into programs. And I think we're pretty aligned with what other CCAs are doing and not at all out of context. Talking to Sean thinks that the staffing will flatten out this year, and we didn't budget for a lot of new positions.
Thank you.
I think we're excited to meet them. I'm hoping we interface with, on the programs team, I've told us that we've all spoken to the people in the staff about this, that being guinea pigs for the website, being guinea pigs for the home upgrade program and to test the bugs as they roll out, we're happy to do that. And so I think that's an opportunity to meet a lot of the new staff in the programs department, because we haven't met any of them yet. We heard about them and are excited to meet them too.
And not only that program, that's right, testing out all the station, all the other, everything.
I take it most of the staff are working remotely?
Yes.
They are, yeah. So we're looking at office space in the future. What we really need, potentially a consolidation. And I think larger meeting space is sort of what people have been asking for. And we don't quite need as much working space because of the number of people that are working remotely. But we're very squished in the conference room.
Is this building owned by PC or is it leased?
No, we do not own this building. We lease it. And we're looking right now at other potential leasing. We'd like to be a little closer to public transit. We'd like to be a little closer to something in the middle of the peninsula, maybe, so that our friends from Half Moon Bay and North County don't have quite as long of a trip. And I think for easier access for our CAC members, for our board and the public, being on some type of a transit corridor or transit situation would be beneficial. I know all of us would take it if we could. Jen? See Jen there.
Yeah, I just think that we might want to agendize this for a future report from staff, so that we can have, going back to our Brown Act presentation, a clear agenda on this one.
That'd be great. Are there any other marketing or community liaison updates?
No.
Great. Is there any public comment on the topic? Oh, there is. Jen, your hand is, maybe not. That was you just doing what you did. Okay, then I will move on, and that's the perfect thing to lead into upcoming topics for discussion.
Yeah. If you like, you can make that an upcoming topic for discussion.
Yes.
But let me first just give you an overview of what's coming up, as I always do. The November board meeting. As y'all know, we just had an election, and there'll be some turnover on our board. So one of the things I think that there's agendized for that meeting is a send off of some of our board members who will be leaving our board. That we're all, that will be a part of that board meeting. Looks like we'll be talking about energy risk management policy. A Salesforce support contract for the programs team. Yeah, that's actually most of what I see on the agenda coming up. So not a lot of kind of customer facing stuff that we usually bring to you all first. In fact, I don't see any customer facing things on that next meeting. So we have so for December, we actually have a little bit of space that I know of. If you want to bring back one of the topics that that we haven't had time to deal with because there was always something more urgent to do. Yeah, so maybe I'll find the list here of some of the topics you brought up in the past. Dan, yeah.
I have a topic that I would love us to refocus on, especially in light of the recent election, is the IRA and how PCE and our service territory can benefit from the IRA, how we can kind of protect or be strategic in how we deploy some of those resources to, in case those resources go away suddenly. Are there any steps we could take to protect against that? And I also wanted to ask, there are a couple of people who haven't really spoken very much this evening on the CAC. I'm going to call you out. And I'm calling you out because I would love to hear from you what topics you want to hear from, what issues resonate with you, and what may make you, you know, a more lively participant in the discussion at future meetings. Melee, Aurelio, Desiree, and Stephen, if you have ideas, I would really love to hear from you guys, because I think you've spoken the least in this meeting. I'm sorry to call you out, but I value your participation in this forum. So.
I was thinking about it when Jason called me. And I talked with Vanessa before. Sometimes the time is go very fast, and to make the question is hard for me. I was thinking about all the great presentations he did. And I was thinking how to pass all the information to the renters in Ferris community, even in Burlingame, because Latin community is a long place, can get the benefits for the electrification, but we face the barrier. The owner doesn't want it, and the renter, even if they want it, the owner say no. This is one thing. If I continue, the owner say yes, they increase the rent for the customer. So it's how we can deal with this one. How PC is gonna working with the renter, with the owner.
Yep.
And even in a Ferris Community Center, a Ferris community, the panels that are too old, the house they are too old, they really can get the benefit, but not the renter, not even the owner, they don't want to pay for the new panel. So even it's a good idea, it's a good benefit for the community, how we can work together to make this thing happen. So how we process it.
Really has brought that up at least 4 times since he's been here, maybe more than that, and I think we should make that like thing. And have staff tell us what the challenges are, what the plan is, and then we make it a focus going forward, because we seem to always, I know it's difficult, but let's address that and make that a priority for us.
Okay, just make sure I heard that correctly. Discussion on how we serve renters and how we can do it better. Is that, did I hear that correctly? Okay.
And maybe how, I mean, I don't know, or really, would it be helpful to, if the staff could somehow give some information to renters so they could talk to their landlords, like a script about it? Would that be? I mean, just, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to do that with your landlord, you know, they're an authority figure and requiring money of you and.
Sometimes the landlord is not even in California. Sometimes the
Right,
landlord
right.
It's a CDR, that's another person is running the business for the owner.
Yeah,
And
right,
he's gonna
right.
say,
Like a property
they're taking
manager.
care about the job, they're taking about, he
Right.
only the rent for the owner.
So would that be helpful if PCE came up with some prompts or some ways that they could approach someone if it's not the owner that they would talk to? I mean, just to kind of provide some starting points?
I think so, yes, and most is, if they get a job for the electrification, they're gonna be sure to increase the rent. Because they say, oh, well, it's like it happened before in another program. And they say, okay, I did this one, you had a new insulation, you had a new refrigerator, you had a new microwave. So they increase the rent for the rent and say, oh, I get this one, but now I have to pay $300.
Yeah. Well, maybe that would be something that they could talk about as well, you know, how to get what you need without all the costs going up. I don't know, just a thought.
I think let's put that on December, and get it going. We won't solve it, but we'll get it going.
I think it would be good to have, like, I think that's what we had that discussion earlier with Philip.
Yeah.
If they cannot charge more for their electricity, they're gonna find somewhere else to charge, because they're not gonna lose money.
Yeah.
So either PCE brings more incentives to help those landlords, so we won't pass the charges on tenants.
These would be good things to talk about next time.
Yeah.
Brown Act.
Thanks. I was just going to suggest that we agendize this and move forward.
All right, any other points about topics?
I think, you know, under what Desiree was saying about, sorry, to Denise.
Diane.
Hey, Diane. Well, I'm like trying to read it at an angle. But, you know, kind of have an overall, you know, how does this election result? Just federal level, PCE strategy. If there's any practical, we don't, just kind of an overall thing. And it'll be it'll be December, January, depending on the time that needs to be digest the outcome of this election.
Another thing, I'll just throw these out there. There was the strategic planning. I don't know when the next phase of that is. Is that December, is that January?
Yes, I think that is January or February where we're coming back.
Well, let's check on it, because if it's
Yeah.
December, let's do it.
Yeah, it's not December,
Okay.
but the consultants have requested that we dedicate either the January or the February CAC meeting to
Great.
more input on the strategic plan.
Okay, and then I heard Michael ask about staffing. I know we got a little bit on that, but maybe we can do that. Or at least put it on the list.
Yeah.
To get an update on it, so we know who's who.
Yeah.
You guys had just mentioned the tracker. I think having that presented to us on an agenda item and where we're at with all the open things would be huge. Diane just said that IRA and how we can be strategic about that. And Cheryl,
I want just to ask a question or maybe add to that. I wasn't here at the beginning of the founding of PCE, but I'm assuming that we are fine as an organization and an entity and not affected by whatever the person in the White House comes up with.
I'll address that really quickly because I worked for the organization, 8 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And CCAs are remarkably insulated from federal policy and from federal funding because we operate under state policy and we operate with our own funding. So we were remarkably not that affected by Trump administration policies previously.
Okay, that's good news. Thank you.
Cheryl, you had did we ever figure out what we wanted to ask?
No.
Okay, never mind. If we figure it out, we'll do it later, right?
We have a hand raised from Chair.
Oh,
Colson.
please.
Thank you. Just through the chair, I just wanted to address the timing of the strategic plan. It looks like we'll be coming back in January, and then probably we won't have a final plan for implementation until probably early to mid-summer. So you'll have plenty of time for commentary and feedback.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Are there any other topics? I think specifically, Diane called out Stephen and Desiree. Do you have anything you want to, even if it's something that you think isn't a big deal, is there a pressing question you want to have raised that we could bring up for next time?
Maybe rates that came up with the
Rates?
yeah. The
Well,
rising rates.
We normally have a presentation from Leslie about the rate, and I don't know when that is, but I think
Stephen, that's ready, you have a
that's the time.
request?
That's good.
Yeah, that we adjourn.
We can do that. I would like an update. It's not putting this at you, but I know you're interested in this, how we're doing all the programs and how the labor piece fits into that. It doesn't have to be in December, but I would like to know that on any big projects or any small projects, because we used to talk about that quite a bit. And I haven't heard that in a while, so.
I think that would be interesting with the new administration, interconnections with other states
Yeah,
and building generation. They're not gonna do it in another state now, right?
I don't know.
They don't have the same laws that California has or environmental protections. Those probably gonna go out the window in a lot of those states.
I think that's true. I think role modeling it, like we heard tonight, some of the things this organization has done have been exported to the state, hopefully beyond, but that's gonna be a challenge, so. And then what about, we haven't talked about education in a while. That was a big thing in the past. I know, but
We could do an update on that at some point. Obviously, we can't do all this in December. But you're putting it on
no, but I
the
guess it's future topics, right? So we're setting the agenda for
Yes,
next year.
yes.
You think education, educating the public or going into schools and the community?
Either, but specifically we did it into schools in the past.
Yeah.
We have a lot going on, we can talk about.
Armella, you're left. What do you got?
I don't have anything,
What do you want to know about? What do you want us to do?
this is why I'm here, I'm learning, I'm just trying to be open minded and seeing what's out there.
When you talk to your neighbors about doing this, what do they ask? What's the main, like, what is the organization? I've never heard of it. What is it that comes up?
I mean, clean energy, I mean, it's about energy, yeah. Overall.
I do think for all of us, we're gonna get this marketing thing plan coming out, and I volunteered all of you to be guinea pigs on it. And I think that'd be really useful to just look at it and be like, I don't get it. Or show it to your most antagonistic neighbor or family member and see what they think, and vice versa, to your most enthusiastic, and what do they want to see? I think that's gonna be rolling out in the next month, so be looking forward to those emails. Okay, I promised you a quick meeting. I was wrong. It's after 9. Is there any public comment on future topics?
Nope.
All right, thank you, guys. I voted you by 5. I lost the vote. Yeah, a bit longer.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Committee member reports. Are there any? Any public? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I recognize it's 9:07. I wanted to warmly congratulate Desiree. And I came here with other things, but we should celebrate the bright lights, and Desiree is a bright light.
I agree.
Hooray.
Is this your last meeting?
No.
No, my next.
Next one will be.
Oh,
Oh, really? Oh, because you can't do them both.
So you're gonna be on our board?
No, we love Don. You be the backup, or is that Phil too? We'll deal with that later. All right. Never mind, sorry. It's been 2 days. I'm sorry. Is there any public comment on that? Thank you, everybody. Thank you, council persons. Thank you, Attorney Stalzer. Thank you, staff. Thank you, everybody here. I'm sorry, it's 9. I don't know what it is. I can't see.
Thank you.
Good night. Talk soon.